Coastlines can be very complex and dynamic systems. The ocean along with wind is one of the greatest erosion perpetrators. These are nature's sculptures that create various and unique natural landscapes. With the rising and fall of tides and swells, the lands near the ocean are constantly changing due to these powerful forces. The creation of cliffs is a very common result of those actions. And those cliffs are never static. They are constantly changing, with old cliffs crumbling down and new ones being formed. The result is a jumbled mass of rocks and boulders everywhere. This makes for a very challenging terrain to progress. In fact, coastline cliffs share common features with mountain cliffs. Both are sculpted and eroded by very strong natural agents, and as such, you could say that a lot of the skills needed for mountaineering can be adapted for coastline crossing. In fact, this later one has even given a name of its own: coasteering. Coasteering is the act of crossing coastline terrains with the use of climbing, mountaineering, and swimming skills. Navigating through these terrains can be very unpredictable, and as such, you'll need to constantly improvise and adapt to all obstacles that appear. This is one of the reasons I really enjoy this sport. You're always on your toes, having to find ways to cross to the next section, and as such, it's just a mental activity as it is physical. For this chapter of the Coastline Challenges, I'll be tackling a short but interesting crossing of a section of the coastline near Lisbon. This will be more of a training for the upcoming sections I intend to make, and a way for me to prepare to the terrain I'll face. So for today, I'll be tackling the coastline surrounding Ponta do Sal and see how far I can go towards Estoril. I'll be as light as possible, as I want to stay the most agile I can. I expect to have to cross and scramble through very big boulders, so in terms of equipment, I'm basically just carrying some water. I don't intend to swim though. Usually in coasteering activities, this is one of the major factors to address. Typical coasteering equipment consists of a full wetsuit and life jacket, helmet and quick dry shoes with good grip. Most often, the way to navigate very difficult terrain relies on jumping in the ocean and swimming around it. Although this is fine by itself, but usually results in coasterers returning to land mostly just to jump over the next cliff. I want to really push my creativity on how to traverse these obstacles without resorting to that option. Walking down to the shore, I start reaching my first obstacles. So far easy enough to just walk around. Going down steep and technical terrain, it's all about finding your balance and using the terrain to support you. By changing the position of your feet, small rocks and edges can work as steps, and by shifting your hip position, you can move your center of gravity to keep stable and balanced. On these coastlines, the most common type of rock you see is limestone. The reason for this comes from the origin of the rock itself. Limestone is made by the compression of seashells during millions of years. Whenever a shell-based sea animal dies, its shell lays on the ocean floor. Millions of years of accumulated shells being compressed by layer over layer of new earth sediments eventually transform them into rocks. With the movement of continental shelves and rise and fall of ocean levels, these rocks eventually emerge from the ocean back to the dry land. Areas where limestone is a very common type of rock were areas that at one point were completely underwater. Up until the late Jurassic period, Portugal was nothing more than an archipelago of islands, and was only later that, due to the result of tectonic movements, that it became the landmass that it is now. So you can imagine that all these rocks were at one point millions of sea animals.
Easier from there.
Like most outdoor sports, traversing technical obstacles, it's all about reading the terrain. Just as you have to study your beta when climbing, you can do the same for hiking. Visualize where you want to go and how you need to move to get there. Limestone, by its nature, it's also a very soft rock, meaning that it's much more easier to dissolve by water compared to other rocks like granite. That's why it's common to see rocks with very sharp edges, and peculiar shapes near the coastline, and that's also why rock falls are also a common thing near these types of cliffs. When approaching these areas, you should be very mindful of the surrounding cliffs. In fact, all these rocks I'm hopping over were at one point part of the cliff behind me. And at any moment, more rocks like these can fall as well. That's something you have to accept in outdoor sports, but of course there are things where the risk is too great to be worth it. In this case, I tried not to stay too close for too long to the cliff wall. When in doubt, you should look at the cliff and check if it looks solid or crumbly. If it looks crumbly, landslides can be common, especially after or during heavy rains, so definitely something to avoid. At one point, I crossed over a big drainage system that connects to one of the local streams. You might remember from my last video where I followed the Caparido stream up to its source with my mountain bike. Here it's actually where it ends up at the ocean.
That's cool.
A few meters ahead, I could hear already its water flowing down the cliffs, and under closer inspection, I could see the whole path was blocked by the running water. During the summer, the stream gets significantly lower water volume, and as such you can easily pass through the rocks. But now at early spring, there is enough water to make a roaring waterfall. This is why this area is locally known as Caiagua, meaning water falling. Crossing this current stream over the rocks would be too dangerous, and since I don't have swimming equipment to continue on the ocean, I'll have to finish my traverse here. Just need to find a way to climb over the cliff, and luckily a fixed rope is close to be found. From here it's a quick climb and I'm back at the surface. Fixed ropes are a common thing near these coastlines, mostly set by fishermen to get them close enough to where the waves hit the rocks, as it's usually where fish gather to eat all the fallen sediments and seeds. For me, however, it's quite a convenient find. On a warm sunny day, coasteering can be a really fun activity, especially where you can enjoy a nice swim afterwards. Today is still a bit cold for that, but nevertheless I got my training's worth. Enough to prepare me for my next coastline incursions. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss my next video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for another adventure.